Week 15 of the NFL season is all but in the books. With 3 weeks to go before the playoffs, we are seeing a lot of important matchups play out. I want to talk about all of them today. As always, tonight, after the Monday Night Football games finish, we will be live on the channel. Well, not live, but a reaction will be up right after them. If you love the NFL, check out the channel, hit the sub button. Let's talk Week 15 NFL Sunday action. The Kansas City Chiefs, they finally won a game that wasn't a close one. The Chiefs pick up a 21-7 victory over the Cleveland Browns. The Chiefs still remain one of a few teams that have not scored 30 points this season. Now, some of that obviously due to Rashee Rice and Hollywood Brown being out, Pacheco missing games. I'm not oblivious to that fact, but the point still stands. Patrick Mahomes, that's the big story here. The ankle injury that he suffered. How major is it? Because even if he just misses 1 or 2 games, it could cost the Kansas City Chiefs the 1 seed in the AFC. Now, the opening lines are out for Chiefs-Texans that is being played this Saturday, because then the following Wednesday is Christmas and the Chiefs play then. So not exactly a long stretch of time for the Chiefs here. If Mahomes is to miss a week and a half, that's 2 games. So really important for the Chiefs that 1, they manage this injury well, but 2, they're able to maybe, produce if he's not playing. Because right now, according to the Vegas spreads, the Chiefs are 2.5-point underdogs versus Houston. So Vegas doesn't think Mahomes is playing this upcoming Saturday. Now, obviously, in this particular game, it went about as how you could expect. The Chiefs defense, which they are a defensive team, dominated. 4 interceptions, forcing turnovers, making Nick Chubb fumble. Unfortunately, Nick Chubb broke his foot, so his season's probably over. That sucks, but Kansas City's defense holds strong. Now they have 2 matchups with the Texans and the Steelers coming up. I don't know if the Chiefs are going to be able to win those games without Patrick Mahomes. Those are some tougher games, especially with those defenses, even with Patrick Mahomes with their offense. Time will tell there. The Chiefs advance to 13-1. But Buffalo is right on their heels. The Cincinnati Bengals season, believe it or not, still alive. A lot of what they needed to happen did happen yesterday. Now, they will still need a Broncos collapse where the Broncos have to lose their last 3 games to the Chargers, the Bengals themselves, and the Chiefs. But now with this Mahomes injury, that Week 18 game for Kansas City, Mahomes might need to play. The Bengals have to win out, and Miami and the Colts each need to lose 1 more game over the next 3 weeks. But the Bengals, they're still playing for something at this point. Joe Burrow had a pretty solid day. The 2 picks isn't good, but Joe Burrow, his pocket navigation has just been so good all year. When T. Higgins and Jamar Chase are both out there, this Cincinnati offense really moves the ball. Chase Brown has been an excellent addition, and their defense that hasn't been good all year finally kind of stepped up. 4 takeaways, 4 turnovers, 4 interceptions. The Bengals score 30+ points and actually win a game. This Bengals team could be dangerous in a playoff situation. I don't know if they're going to get there, but they have some really premier top-end talent on offense. For the Titans, Will Levis ain't the guy. I think that's what you found out. Will Levis could not succeed against this Bengals defense. I think seeing that, you kind of come to the conclusion that Will Levis is not going to succeed in the NFL. Personally, that's where I am with it. Tony Pollard suffered an ankle injury in this game. Will he play next week? I don't know. It's up in the air. The Titans are 3-11, so they'd probably lean cautious with him. For my fantasy people out there, something to keep an eye on. But the Bengals progress forward. Their season continues. They are still playing for something. And what ended up being a really fun 1 o'clock slot game, the Washington Commanders defeated the New Orleans Saints 20-19. All praise to Jaden Daniels if you're a Commanders fan. The scheme, the Kingsbury scheme, still not being excellent at this point. It does still have that, hey, once November, Thanksgiving hits, we fall off a little bit because we are kind of a one-trick pony when it comes to scheme. But Jaden Daniels has just been so damn impressive that I think he's going to will the Washington Commanders into the playoffs. It's not set in stone yet, but they have a game lead on whether it's the, Seahawks next in the NFC West or whoever it ends up being between the Seahawks and Rams. But I think the Commanders probably get in, and the NFC West only gets 1 team in at this point. Jaden Daniels, 25 of 31 for 226 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, a 118.5 passer rating, adds 66 yards on the ground. This guy did it all. He willed his team to a victory. That one touchdown pass he had to Terry McLaurin, where his pocket navigation, he almost fell down, got up, made the throw. McLaurin makes the catch. Like, that is a superstar duo at work there. Unbelievable. For the Saints, Alvin Kamara leaves with an undisclosed injury after having a crazy one-handed touchdown catch. I mean, their season now virtually in the books, 5-9. I respected them going for 2 at the end of that game. You know, you're the Saints. The season's pretty much over. Let's not play for overtime. Let's not get these guys any more banged up. Let's figure it out here on this play. They ran the 2-point conversion play or the goal line play that teams continue to run, whether it's college and the NFL, that I just can't stand, where everybody immediately rolls to the right. And the reason I can't stand that play is because if it is guarded correctly, it's over. It's over immediately. There's nothing that your quarterback can do. There's nothing that a receiving option can do. If that defense slides to the right with you, it's over. I hate that play, but the Commanders pick up a good win. The Baltimore Ravens handle business in New York, 35-14 victory over the Giants. Lamar Jackson, man, I've said it once, I've said it 100 times this season. This is the best passing version of Lamar Jackson we've ever seen. 21 of 25, 290 yards, 5 touchdowns, no picks, a 154 passer rating. The guy was absolutely on one. Derrick Henry didn't have to do anything in this game versus the Giants. It was Lamar, the Lamar Jackson show. He absolutely popped out and just balled in this game. For the Giants, season's over. Let's, if you're them, I love seeing Malik Neighbors go off, but it's Shador or Cam Ward time in New York. For Baltimore, the defense looks pretty solid, but you're playing Tim Boyle and Tommy DeVito. Not too much to read into that. The offense, very efficient, very back on track to where they need to be. A big matchup coming up with the Pittsburgh Steelers this upcoming Saturday could determine the winner of the AFC North very easily. Baltimore still in that mix for can they go to the Super Bowl and can they win it? They have, I believe, statistically, it's like a top 10 offense of all time. Lamar's playing at a very high level. The Ravens, they're a good team. The Giants, they're a bad team. This game went about how you'd expect it to go. The Cowboys pick up the 30-14 win over the Carolina Panthers. It's actually kind of crazy. The Cowboys are in a spot where they could get into the playoffs in the NFC. Theoretically, at 9-8, they could become that 7 seed with Cooper Rush. Mike McCarthy might be coaching good enough to save his job. Truthfully, I do mean that. He might be. Rico Dowdle just torches this Panthers defense, 25 for 149. CeeDee Lamb does what CeeDee Lamb does, 9 for 116 and a touchdown. Micah Parsons was an absolute game wrecker. Like, all the pieces of the Cowboys that you expect to be good were good. The team feels back on track. The problem is they're missing Dak Prescott. And without him, obviously, their ceiling is sneaking into the wild card and probably getting torched by whoever the 2 seed ends up being at that point, whether it's Philly, Minnesota, or Detroit. But Dallas is kind of impressing me. The team is showing that they have some fight in them. Mike McCarthy, I really think he's saving his job. With the way he's coaching in the second half of this season, winning games with Cooper Rush and winning without Dak Prescott, I really do think he's saving his season. Bryce Young, listen, he'd been great for the last month and a half. This was a bad game here. The Cowboys defense is pretty decent. Jalen Coker, 4 for 110, but he had that 83-yard touchdown. But the Panthers, they're growing. They're having some growing, signs shown there. I do think that Bryce Young will be back next year. I do believe that that is the right choice. The Panthers, they move up in the draft. They're going to get some pieces around him. They're going to make some money bids at, the free agent wide receivers, whether it's a T. Higgins or somebody else, maybe a Chris Godwin. The Panthers, though, going in the right direction. A tough loss here, but ultimately, at the end of the day, wins and losses don't fully matter at this point for this team. It's what do you see from your players to look forward to next season? We had an absolute blast from the past performance from Aaron Rodgers and Davante Adams as the New York Jets defeated the Jacksonville Jaguars 32-25. Rodgers 16-30, 289 yards, 3 touchdowns, a 120 passer rating. Davante Adams, 9 for 198 and 2. Garrett Wilson was 3 for 56 and 1. Listen, when Davante's having a game like that, you just keep feeding him the rock. He's that guy. Aaron Rodgers also 45 rushing yards. The guy's 40 years old off a torn Achilles, and he's rushing for 45 yards on the game. That was pretty crazy to see. What the Jets showed me is that next year they should draft a quarterback 100%. But the pick that they're going to have, isn't going to be high enough to get Shador or Cam Ward, a guy that you start right away. Whether it's Milroe, Ewers, or whoever they end up taking at quarterback, let them sit a year behind Rodgers. If he wants to come back to the team, he's already under contract. Redshirting this guy in the NFL behind one of the greatest players of all time is not a bad choice. If Rodgers is willing to teach him and knows that next year is his last year, he's going to go into a system where he'll have Breece Hall, have Garrett Wilson, sit on the bench, learn, develop a chemistry with these guys in practice. That's not a bad choice. Are the Jets going to be a Super Bowl team next year anyways? No. What is best for the future quarterback is letting him have the best opportunity to succeed. What is that? Sit for a year behind one of the GOATs. Plain and simple. For the Jaguars, the season's cooked. Brian Thomas, though, looking absolutely excellent. 10 for 105 and 2 touchdowns. You love to see that if you're a Jags fan. Mac Jones actually playing some decent football, but at the end of the day, this is Trevor Lawrence's team. They paid him the money. They're going to fire Doug Peterson. They're going to look to bring in a Ben Johnson type coach, and we will see what Trevor Lawrence and the Jags are made of next year. Ultimately, this game didn't really teach you much about either team for this season. It was a fun game, but both of these teams, their season's over. Well, the Miami Dolphins lose to the Houston Texans 20-12, and like I have said time and time again, you put Tua in a spot against a good team where he needs to win the game, and he will absolutely crumble. Tua Tagovailoa must have thought that Derek Stingley Jr. was one of the wide receivers on his team the way he kept throwing him the ball in this game. 3 interceptions, less than 200 passing yards, a 60 passer rating, and don't get me wrong, Mike McDaniel's got to eat just as much of a blame for this. This guy is 3-15 against teams with a winning record in his career. Tua constantly crumbles whenever they face a good team. This Miami Dolphins team is overrated and it's bad. Tyreek Hill probably should be traded this offseason, honestly, if you could recoup some value for him. I would force feed him targets over the next 3 games, let people think he's excellent because he's clearly lost a bit of a step, and move on from him as soon as possible. Tua Tagovailoa, an absolute mistake and joke to give him that money. Mike McDaniel very well could be on the hot seat. This Dolphins team, I said it last offseason, I'll say it again, they will never succeed with the Tua-Mike McDaniel combination. It is not good enough. Both guys are overrated and mid. And that's the truth. And then with a bad offensive line that they have versus the Houston Texans pass rush, this was as predictable an outcome as you could get. The Houston Texans offense is not anything special right now, especially with their offensive line. Their leading receiver was Joe Mixon with 33 receiving yards. And they felt like they dominated this game. They did. Dar Agumbawale, the leading rusher, 35 yards. The Houston Texans virtually could not do anything on offense. They have a problem too. Bobby Slowick, this guy's offensive game plan, run on 1st and 2nd down. Let's get to 3rd and 8, 3rd and 7, and hopefully CJ can make a play. That is their game plan. But at least they have a guy in CJ who is proven. He's proven more than Tua already. He's won a playoff game. The Dolphins are cooked. The Texans, they're probably cooked, but they won the AFC South. They'll be in the playoffs. And I do think, depending on who they get matched up against, they could win a playoff game theoretically with that defensive line. But Houston needs to attack the offensive line this offseason and probably move on from Bobby Slowick. Dolphins, they need to blow it all up. Houston, minor changes. Houston gets the win, 20-12. The Denver Broncos picked up a 31-13 victory over the Indianapolis Colts. This was a crazy game because the Colts were running away with this game, and then Jonathan Taylor breaks away what would have been a 40-yard touchdown run, drops the ball right before crossing the goal line. It's a touchback, and that just completely shifted the momentum. The Colts would have gone up 20-7 in the first half had that happened. They ended up just getting absolutely obliterated the rest of the way. 21 fourth quarter points. That pick 6 on the trick play was absolutely disgusting. What people are saying, they're writing off Anthony Richardson, and here's what I'll say. With a guy that is as raw talent as him, you have to let him work through the kinks. The benching that they did of him, with the way that his talent needs to be developed, it's through snaps. It's not through sitting. He has to make these mistakes. Josh Allen made these mistakes for 2 years. Do you guys remember the weird play versus Houston, like the fumble interception that Josh Allen had where for some reason he threw that ball? Super boneheaded decision. Those are the mistakes that Anthony Richardson is going to and has to make. You have to live with them. When you drafted this guy number 4 overall, you knew that he was a raw prospect. You knew that you had to coach him into being better than he was. Yet, here we stand today. People are saying, he's done. It's over. He won't be done. It won't be over. They're going to give them another year for sure. And they should. They absolutely should. For Denver, resilience. That's how I'll describe the effort in this game. A lot of teams could have and would have rolled over. Bo Nix has a really bad game. 130 yards, 3 touchdowns, 3 picks, a 61.4 passer rating. Not a good game from Bo Nix. Their leading receiver, Cortland Sutton, 32 yards. Like in the NFL, guys, in December, games get messy. Games get sloppy. Defenses win a lot. Cold weather, teams worn out. You're looking ahead to the playoffs. Denver showing this resilience, you could sell me on Sean Payton Coach of the Year. You certainly could. This Broncos team's over-under at the beginning of the year was 5.5. And it's very likely that they finish a 10-11 win team and get into the playoffs. And mind you, they might win a playoff game. That defense, they force turnovers, they make you uncomfortable. Like Anthony Richardson had a bad day, yes, and he usually does. But this Denver Broncos defense can force you into mistakes. The Broncos win this game, deservedly so. They just got to win one of the next 3, and they're pretty much in. Especially with this victory over the Colts. I think they have like a 92% shot to make the playoffs now. Like, talk about a season for the Broncos that not a lot of people saw coming. The Philadelphia Eagles beat the Pittsburgh Steelers 27-13 in a very dominant fashion. The Eagles, all the talk all this week was about their passing game and A.J. Brown and Jalen Hurts. And here's what they said. We can pass the ball too. The Steelers' game plan very clearly was to slow down / shut down Saquon Barkley, stacked the box. And what do the Eagles do? When you have receivers like A.J. Brown, who's top 5 talent in the NFL, and Devonta Smith, a former Heisman Award winner, in single or lax coverage because the line is so stacked in the box. And Jalen Hurts, you just let him sit there and make decisions, and he'll get the ball to those guys. A.J. Brown, 8 for 110 and a touchdown. Devonta Smith, 11 for 109 and a touchdown. These guys can show up. They can beat you in both ways, and they showed you in this game. We could talk about the Steelers and their offense without George Pickens and why I think that they still are potentially a Super Bowl viable team, but they clearly need George Pickens out there. But the story of this game was Philadelphia. Their ability to win, throwing or running the ball, was amplified and shown in this game. They are on a 10-game win streak. Their defense is the best in the NFL in terms of yardage allowed. This is a complete roster, and they make you play their style football. In the second half of this game, Pittsburgh barely sniffed the ball. The time of possession split was 25-5. The Eagles not only can beat you through the air on the ground, but they press on you all game with that offensive line. They tire you out, and they can control the clock. This is the makings of a team that can win the Super Bowl. You are seeing it before your eyes. Excellent defense. Two-dimensional offense, passing or rushing. Great offensive line. They're showing you each and every week. People were mad that Jalen Hurts wasn't throwing the ball enough in a 9-game win streak. To make it 10, he goes 25 of 32, 290 yards, 2 touchdowns, and a 125 passer rating. You want to put narratives to bed? That's how you do it. For Pittsburgh, man, they need George Pickens as a field stretcher. There's no doubt in my mind about it. And again, let's give it a little bit of context. Philadelphia has been the best coverage defense over the last 2 months. No doubt about it. When you're rolling out there with Calvin Austin, Ben Skoranek, Mike Williams, Scotty Miller as your receiving core against a defense that has that good of coverage, obviously there's going to be some things happening. Philly was able to stack the box. They were able to stop the run while also guarding Pittsburgh's weapons without George Pickens out there. The Pittsburgh Steelers have very narrow margins for how they have to perform offensively to win games. When you're up against a team with the offensive talent of Philly and the defensive prowess without your team at full strength, this is what's going to happen. It is a narrow margin. It is a narrow line Pittsburgh has to walk to be able to compete with the top tier echelon teams, your Philadelphia, your Buffalo, your Detroit, your Kansas City. To be able to compete with those teams, things have to go very well for Pittsburgh. They didn't in this spot. You had a fumble from Najee Harris. You were missing your wide receiver one. TJ Watt gets a little banged up in this game. This is what's going to happen for Pittsburgh. The margins are thin. But at the end of the day, I agree with what Coach Tomlin said. It's one loss. Let's not get over dramatic. They have a game versus Baltimore this upcoming Saturday. Pretty much writes the winner of the division. Let's see what happens. The Arizona Cardinals keep their season alive with a 30-17 victory over the New England Patriots. The Cardinals got a nice little stretch down the rest of the way where I really do think that it's, if Washington loses a couple games and Seattle is out Geno Smith, the Cardinals could very well sneak into the playoffs as a 7 seed as well. They play the Rams week 17. Like, the Cardinals are not out of this. They play the Panthers next week and the Rams play the Jets. So, both teams should be favored to win there going into that week 17 game. Like, the winner of that game could very well win the NFC West. Kyler Murray, I thought he had a really solid day, 23 of 30 passing, 224 yards. Just doesn't end up getting any of the touchdowns because James Conner was 16 for 110 for 2, and the other touchdown was a Greg Dort rushing touchdown that was fumbled but recovered by a lineman. The Cardinals, either way, looked pretty solid in this game. They still got some life in them. Trey McBride, 9 for 87. Marvin Harrison Jr., I'd like to see a little bit more. I really would. But at the end of the day, a win is a win for Arizona. The New England Patriots, Drake May continues to impress. 202 yards, a 99.6 passer rating. That's kind of all you're focused on if you're New England. Some people are saying Gerard Mayo's on the hot seat. I doubt it. With Robert Kraft, he handpicked this guy. He's going to give him more than one season. He's going to let him develop some talent, draft some more talent. He knew that the roster wasn't in a position to succeed and go be a playoff team when he handed the keys over to Gerard Mayo and Jacoby Brissett was their starting quarterback to open the year. I think it's crazy to think Gerard Mayo is going to be out after a bad season that we all kind of saw coming. But Drake May, man, you have to be happy with what you're seeing from him if you're a Patriots fan. And for the Cardinals, the season still alive. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers absolutely annihilate the Los Angeles Chargers 40-17. Baker Mayfield, man, 288, 4 touchdowns, a 135.3 passer rating. Jalen McMillan really has started to step up with Chris Godwin being out over the last couple of weeks. Mike Evans, 9 for 159 and 2 touchdowns. Bucky Irving, 15 for 117. The man averaged 8 yards per carry. This story is twofold. On the Buccaneers side of things, I fully stand by this. If Chris Godwin was healthy, this team would be a Super Bowl threat. This team would absolutely be a Super Bowl threat with Chris Godwin. I'm not sure they have the consistent firepower to go on a stretch of games where they beat a Minnesota, a Philly, a Detroit, and then go win a Super Bowl versus a Buffalo or a healthy Kansas City or Baltimore. I just don't think they have that offensive firepower without Godwin. But this offseason, if they can improve that secondary a little bit and they can get Chris Godwin back and keep the rest of the team the same, you better watch out for Tampa Bay, man. You better watch out for them. I mean, this is why for weeks on the tier list, I kept having them over Atlanta and saying that they're going to win this division and don't sleep on them to win a playoff game. Tampa Bay versus Minnesota, that could go either way. And theoretically, a 13-win Minnesota Vikings team could be out of the playoffs after one game again. Reminiscent of what happened when they played the Giants. They are great against the run. Now, don't get me wrong. The Chargers don't really have a run game without J.K. Dobbins, but 32 rushing yards is 32 rushing yards. That's all the Buccaneers allowed. Baker's playing excellent football. Mike Evans, back, healthy, chasing a 1,000-yard season, motivated. This team is going to go into the playoffs, and they're going to host a playoff game. Do not sleep on them. For the Chargers, I think we're starting to see a little bit of the limitations of this team that people maybe thought that they had. Now that they're playing some good quarterbacks on the back end of the schedule, we're seeing some teams move the ball against them. They were ranked the number 1 defense for a while, but you look at the quarterbacks they faced in the first half of the year, it's obviously lesser competition than what they're facing now. I do think the Chargers are a good team, and I certainly think they could win a playoff game, but I think their limitations and their ceiling are being seen. They are missing some weapons to be competitive offensively, and the defense, it needs a little bit more development. Jim Harbaugh wasn't going to come in and make this team a Super Bowl team overnight. They're going in the right direction, But again, we're starting to see a little bit of that ceiling for this Chargers squad. And then the absolute game of the day. The Buffalo Bills win 48-42 over the Detroit Lions. For Buffalo, Josh Allen, to me, it's over. The MVP award is his. Unless Saquon Barkley goes nuclear over the last 3 weeks and breaks Eric Dickerson's rushing record, I think this is Josh Allen's award to lose. Another fantastic day, another 400-plus yard day, 4-touchdown day, no turnover, 122.4 passer rating. Josh Allen and the Bills are absolutely firing right now. They're coming off a week where they lost 44-42 to the Rams. They win this game 48-42. The offense is absolutely cooking. They are unreal at this point. James Cook, 14 for 105 and 2 touchdowns, along with 41. You had all these weapons finally back. Keon Coleman with a big catch. Kincaid, Knox, Shakir, Ty Johnson was the leading receiver. Buffalo is absolutely loaded. To me, they are the best team in the AFC right now, and I don't think it's close. We'll see where Kansas City can get to with Marquise Hollywood Brown coming back and Pacheco gearing up to be fully healthy. We'll see. Baltimore, that defense, it's starting to step up. We'll see. But Buffalo, to me, right now, you have to view them as the best team in the AFC. You have to. They are playing the best football in the AFC. Now, the defense, that's where you could be worried. Back-to-back weeks of letting up, a total of 43 points per game. Obviously, that is a concerning way to play football. But the Bills, man, they're absolutely legit. I think McDermott will get the defense right. They're just playing 2 potentially top 5 offenses. Again, the Rams, when healthy, they could be a top 5 offense with Stafford, McVay, Kupp, Nakua, Kyron Williams. The Lions, nobody doubts if they're a top 5 offense. On Detroit side of things, I love the Lions. I love everything they're about. I'm not sure that they can win a Super Bowl anymore. And it wasn't just because of the result of this game. But in this game, an already injury-riddled team now loses David Montgomery, potentially for the season. Aleem McNeil for the season. Carlton Davis, potentially for the season. That is on top of guys like Aiden Hutchinson, Davenport, Anzalone. The list goes on for this team. Detroit has been fucked by the injury bug this year. There's no other way around it. They are getting absolutely railed right now. And it sucks. You hate to see it. They are such a fun team. But that defense, it might be one injury too many. And now losing Montgomery on that offense, an offense that you needed to be very high level to win games. It's a lot of pressure on Jared Goff now. Because Jahmyr Gibbs, obviously he's great, but maybe he's not ready to be a full workhorse guy. We'll see. But there is just too much shit happening wrong for the Lions right now that isn't happening for the Eagles, the Packers, or the Vikings. I'd argue all 3 of those teams are getting better, while the Lions are getting destroyed by injuries. You feel for them. It sucks. But at the end of the day, I just don't know if I believe in that Lions defense to hold up for 3, maybe 4 straight playoff games. If Detroit were to fall to the 5 seed, they would have to go to Tampa or to the Rams and play one of those quarterbacks who's been firing. Then they would have to play Philly or Minnesota or Green Bay, and then they'd have to play another one of those 3 teams likely. And then if you got to the Super Bowl, it's this Bills team waiting for you, or probably the Chiefs or Ravens. I just don't think the defense has enough. The tiers, there's going to be some shakeup this week. So if you're not already subscribed to the channel, to check out my tier list, it comes out on Tuesdays at 4:30 p.m. Make sure you hit that sub button, because we're going to have a lot of shakeup as we head to the final 3-week stretch. Let me know your guys' thoughts on all these games. I appreciate the support as always. You love the NFL, hit that sub button, hit that like button. I'll catch you next time. Peace.